pronounce that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to get a proper introduction. So you're on episode 34 of the Bearzi podcast. I got a fellow content creator, Daiello, from Ohio, I believe.
Yep. You got it.
Hey, good morning, bro. So what's going on? How you doing?
Doing well. Just trying to take it day by day. If you try to do too much, more than today can allow, you get overwhelmed. So, yeah, just I don't know. I was really appreciative that you reached out. I know we had scheduling, trying to figure these things out, but I was glad to be able to hang out with you today and just talk about design, talk about life, content creation, and all that.
Yeah. So I don't know how familiar you are with my work or if you checked out the pod, but my podcast, I had this idea, I think it was like 2 years ago, that was sort of influenced by Joe Rogan. And it's not just a Joe Rogan podcast, but he had this mentality where he treats fellow comedians as sort of like a brotherhood. And most comedians, they kind of fight with each other and they get jealous over each other's success, while his perspective is, we should work together. We should lift our fellow comedians up. We should build this community. And I was like, why don't I kind of do that with YouTube? Because on YouTube, I always hear people like, oh, this guy's blowing up. That's not fair. I deserve more views. Why does he have subscribers? Right? There's all this weird negativity. So I'm like, for my podcast, I wanted to just kind of find interesting people, have conversations, and promote their work with no intention of benefiting myself from it. So that is the sole purpose and intention of this podcast.
Yeah, and I checked out a couple of your other podcasts because I kind of wanted to get a flavor for how should I be interacting? How should I think about? What should I prepare for? But yeah, I appreciate just the fact that you just want to talk to other people. And that's in my world, design, that's what I do. I talk to other people, try to understand where they're at, where they're going, how we can help. So it's cool. It's a good idea. I like it.
Yeah, so that's sort of why I reached out to you. So naturally, I'm a super curious person. I'm always wanting to learn about things, which is weird because I was a huge failure in college and university. I was I dropped out. I failed everything. When it comes to education and I guess the academic world through textbooks, I'm useless. But when it comes to the real world and conversations and topics and niches, I'm always what's that? And I thought, UX design, what's this? And you had these recommendations about books and improving your life and all this productivity type of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's why I was kind of intrigued, because I had no idea what even UX or I think you had a video titled UI design or UX design, something about talking about the differences of it. So in terms of your career, is this something that you do professionally?
Yeah. So I graduated years ago with a degree in graphic design, but I knew that wasn't where I wanted to go with things. And similar to you, I struggle academically. I'm just not an academic. Tests, very difficult for me. Studying books and just rote memorization, not very easy for me. So one of the things I loved about design was that it took abstract ideas that you would read in a book and it put pictures to them, or it takes concepts that are hard to understand and makes them simple and easy to understand. So that kind of drew me into the idea and concept of what design was doing. But yeah, professionally, I've been doing, you can call it user experience design. It's kind of it's shifting now more into what's called product design, which is just a lot of labeling, small context changes, what you work on is just a little different. But yeah, right now in my career, I'm more of a mentor manager than I am an actual doer of the work. And that's brought just a lot of satisfaction in seeing others succeed, and helping other people actually get the win, and taking the knowledge, all the stuff that I failed at before. Hey, here's how I failed before. Here's how you can succeed so you don't fail the way that I did. So that's a big part of what I'm doing now. And it's, it's a full-time job. I love it. It's got its challenges, but it's really interesting work to do. So.
Wow, that's awesome. See, I like that part where you talked about like helping other people. And it's something that I talk about a lot on my channel too, where it's sort of like I feel good when I help someone else and I do something that's selfless, right? And I feel like so many people are caught up in the me, 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 me. Like, what can I do for me, right? And always
Yeah.
like they're obsessed with their own stuff. But when you help other people, it feels good. Like it's
Yeah.
a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always like trying to keep my mind open and perspective open to things because I think that's it's a healthy way to live. And it's sad because this selfishness, right, that I'm talking about is very prevalent online. I feel like everyone is like, look at what I'm doing now. Look at me. This is my Instagram. I'm here. I'm doing this, right? And it's like this terrible, terrible mentality that affects a lot of people's mental health. And that's like another topic I
Yeah.
like to kind of get into a lot. And it's like it's a hard thing to say because the older generation doesn't understand like the word mental health. Like when I grew up, that word never even existed when I was in high school. Like mental health, the hell was that? No one talked about that. But now, once you realize, like, oh my god, this is where our insecurities come from. This is where our anxieties come from, our fears, and all these social problems we have in the world. Right? It comes from mental health, right? And it's something that, again, we need to talk about more, right?
Yeah, and that's interesting. It's really interesting just watching the evolution of social media and how in the early days it was a great fun platform for people to interact in, but the downsides that have come with that, right? The need and the yearning for approval of people that you've never even met, right? Your circle goes from 30, 40 friends to you got 10,000 followers, and now you feel this compulsion to keep them all happy. So your life becomes about following your followers rather than actually just trying to like love for and care for and help other people out. And that's a background a lot of just kind of where I'm at in my life, like with my faith and with just trying to serve someone greater than like my followers. So this is a lot of what's behind my channel is that I've been blessed by a lot of people in my life who've poured into me. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how can I give that back to people beyond just my scope of management, beyond just my team that, I'm trying to help, but, everyone else that I could interact with. Hey, this is free knowledge that's been given to me. It's helped me out. I hope it helps you out. So that's been kind of like the mindset behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
I love it. So that's a perfect segue into your channel. So I am always interested in other content creators. Like, what was the initial goal or idea or passion behind starting the YouTube channel? I always want to know what was your reasoning for starting it?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a mixed bag at best. Years ago, I found that as you are creating content in your industry, so for me, in UX and product design, by being able to express myself and what I was thinking, I actually got clear in my ability to express it. So it was actually refining my ability to talk about it. And then what I found was, as I got better about talking about it, the people who I was supposed to be helping to grow, they grew faster because I could more clearly articulate, hey, here's this aspect of the UI you're creating. It's great. It's wonderful. It's working really well here. But have you thought about this section here? Have you thought about what that actually does and how it works and how's the user want to interact with it? What's the system on the back end going to do? And then they have this aha moment. It's like, oh, I really like that aha moment. Like, and I didn't make that aha moment. They figured it out because I was able to sort of like give them some parameters to think about. So that was like sort of number one. And years ago, I was in a transition point in my career, and I was using content as a way of trying to describe to people who I am, how I think, without ever talking to me. So someone who was possibly going to hire me could go to my blog or to podcasts I had years ago, and they could actually listen to, how's this John guy talk? How's he think about the world of design? And so that was another big amplifier. But when I actually started my YouTube channel, it was mainly because I realized I was at a point in my career where I realized I really want to double down on helping people grow. And I've got a lot of knowledge that I just want to dump out there. And why not see if more people are interested in this than just the 5 people that I was managing at the time? And so that kind of became the impetus for, I've done this for a decade. I don't know everything. There are people out there who know way more than me, but I'm finding traction in some of the stuff I'm writing about and talking about. So let's just give it away for free and see what happens. So that's kind of like where the whole YouTube channel started. It's not huge. I think as of today, I have 200 subscribers. It's like,
hey, that's something, bro.
It's not about the numbers, right? Like people will comment back and I'll say, hey, thanks for the video. I'm always really curious to know, like, what was it about the video that was helpful? Because if I can explain something or do a follow-up video or write an article or something like that, I'm happy to do that. Because I want to give the most valuable stuff that's in my head out to other people. So that's kind of like where it started, was just the idea that I do have some valuable contributions I can make. Let's see if other people are interested in hearing it. So.
I like that. Yeah, I always ask that question because I always receive a mixed bag of answers, right? There are some people like, oh, it's just a hobby. I want to do it for fun. And then there's other people who are like me that are obsessed. Where like, I've wanted to make a YouTube channel for years. It's like a passion in my life. It's the goal. It's my sole ambition. There's this massive scale where it could be like your life's purpose or something I do on Sundays, right?
Yeah.
It's so different. And the one thing I like to tell people is that if you want to take YouTube seriously, one of the best things about it is to just keep it fun and do what you love. And unfortunately, I've talked to a few creators who it started off as fun. It started off as their passion project, but then it became all about analytics and the numbers and subscribers and likes. And I'm very cognizant of that because it affects me on a daily basis. Because YouTube is basically like my passion. It's what I love to do. I used to be a videographer for a little bit, like a freelance videographer. So this is where all like the camera stuff comes from. But at the end of the day, like gun to my head, if you said you can do one job for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I would just want to make YouTube videos. That's all I want to do. I just want to make YouTube videos. But also I want to be able to do it and not only create other people, like promote other people's work, but I want to do it in a healthy way. Right. So for me, I have these demons where I have to fight every day. Like we were talking about before the pod, I was up last night until 2 a.m. making a video, right? That's going to affect my sleep. That's going to affect my health. Is that a healthy way to live? Obviously not, right? Obviously that's not a good decision to make.
Yeah.
But again, I have these demons where I'm struggling with, and I'm sure there's tons of other creators who might feel similar to me, right? So maybe there's something that I could help or some perspective that I could share with someone. And I feel like that's what is so great about YouTube is, sharing something that you love and just it being fun is like the best thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely where I try and stay. Like I took the month of May off just because it was a crazy month for me. Like I knew that if I tried to make a video, it would become forced. It would become probably something unhelpful in general. So I was just like, you know what, month of May, I'm just going to double down. I'm going to get my life priorities figured out, and then I'm going to hit the road back in June. So this was my month of May thing. So thank you for setting this up.
It's good, man. No worries.
It's important, like for me, that YouTube is not the thing. YouTube is one of like the things that I'm doing. So I've been working on articles that I write, and so I try to express myself in different ways. And YouTube was one of the ways that I could do that. And it found kind of its own little home. And what I'm finding is there are certain kinds of ways that I can express design ideas and content you just can't really do in an article format or something like that, or writing a book or something. So I've really been trying to find out, how do I best use YouTube as a medium in general, and not let it like rule my life. Like I said, I've got a wife, I've got 3 kids. And so if all I ever did was YouTube all the time, like they would suffer for it. So how do I mix it in with my full-time job and my community involvement and everything else that I'm doing? How do I still make progress, rather than it being like all consuming. So that's always been my goal. Like, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next article I can write? What's the next video I can make? And then just keep churning away at progress on that, so that I'm kind of always moving forward, even if I'm not done, because we're never gonna be done, right? Like, we're just gonna do this forever. So
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because like I have a 2.5-year-old right now, and my wife is currently pregnant. She's due in July, so we're gonna have our second one.
congrats.
Thanks,
That's
man.
amazing.
Dad life, bro. Dad life, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like, if it's like a life-changing thing that happens. Well, this is how I felt. Like, before having kids, I never really knew what like true love was. It's like everyone loves himself, obviously. Everyone loves their parents or their brothers or sister, of course. But it's not until you have a child where it's an extension of yourself. And all of a sudden, the child's needs supersedes all of your own. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, where you are, everything you think about, everything you care about, it's for your kids. And that transformation, it gave me so much perspective in my life, and it gave me so much motivation and drive and determination to be a better person, right? And also be aware of, things that I'm addicted to. Like, for example, like before my YouTube channel kind of started and all this stuff, I was heavily addicted to video games. And I don't mean like playing a couple hours after work. It'd be like play until the sun came up the next day, and it's 6 a.m. and I've been playing like Call of Duty for 8 hours straight. On the weekend, I play for like 16 hours. Like, it was insane, like an insane amount of like time and energy that I was putting towards something that's completely useless, right? And again, it's like perspective, right? I feel like you have a good balance between your full-time job, your family, you said your faith, and then this YouTube channel that you have on the side. And I also saw you had a podcast, right? I think it was called like Bits and Bolts or something.
Yes.
Is that
Bites
right?
and Bolts.
Oh, Bites and Bolts.
Yeah, that's old school. That's probably like 6 years old now.
Oh, really?
But I was re-releasing them because what I was like, I had a few people who recently discovered some. I had it stored on an old website. I was like, oh, that stuff's good. You should re-release that. I was like, okay. So I kind of like re-released everything. I've toyed around with restarting it, but that was like another way to just experiment with what's different ways I can express myself and help other people grow through the lessons that I've learned in life. So, yeah.
So you were an early adopter of the podcast 6 years ago? Dang.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And that was really aimed at, when it started, there was a company I really wanted to work for. And I was like, you know what? They're all in on this kind of media, so I'm going to kind of prove that I can do this kind of media. But when I got 2-3 episodes in, I'm like, I don't care about that job anymore. I'm just going to keep going. And, it lasted about a year, maybe. I think I had a total of like 12 episodes over 2 seasons. But that's kind of where it started, where I was like, oh, I can do this kind of like content production, like this rich media. And I really love it. Like, I love mixing in different audio and figuring out how do you create a feel to a thing that's not like visual, because my world is all visual all the time in UX and product design. So exploring video and like writing for me was really interesting, because it was another way of like crafting communication and expression that wasn't in my day-to-day, that then I find actually benefit from, because I've learned how to do it a different way that I can bring into my everyday life at work or, in the other stuff that I do. So
That's interesting. So
yeah.
I also have like another question I love to ask people. It's
Sure.
like, in terms of like the whole UX design stuff, your career, the side project on YouTube, do you have like a long-term goal of where you want to be and what to like?
Absolutely.
Do you have like what's the dream life? What I'm essentially asking.
Yeah. So I have 2 divergent dreams right now. So let me explain that a little bit. So if you had asked me that question 12 months ago, I would have said, I want to be head of design of a company so that I can really influence and impact a product. I'm questioning whether or not I actually want that, because the further you rise up in a company, the more abstracted and distant you become from the everyday people doing the work and the work that's happening. I think I still want to go there because there's always this like level of mentorship and like taking people under your wing and caring for them and helping them rise up through the ranks and helping them get wins. But one of my like really long-term goals is I would love to be able to retire out of full-time everyday grind work and have sort of like this side of content production that's sort of just kind of churning a little bit, but it's enough that I can do what I want to do, so I can do more ministry, faith-based work for my life. So where I want to go is like, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but that's sort of in the back of my mind always, like, how can I decouple myself from $1 an hour and get to the point where I'm able to invest in work in a way that's meaningful, but also able to invest in the lives of people in my community, and in my church and other things that is actually even more meaningful to me, because my job is a job and I love it. I love what I do, but it's kind of like an ends to a means, you know, so, or means to an end. So,
yeah, I respect that. It's interesting because I don't know if I would call this envy, but or maybe more intrigue. I'm always very interested when people have like a belief in their faith, right? And to give you, I guess, like some like a backstory. I'm someone who grew up very mixed. Like I am biracial by ethnicity, my parents' religious beliefs were completely different, and there was no one like me growing up. Like, and I've always been in this strange place where like I'd have friends, you know, they'd be from like Pakistan or whatever, and they're Muslim, right? And then they all have their same beliefs, and you know, other people are Muslim as well, and they can relate. And then I've had other people who are Christian, you know, they go to church and they're Catholic, and they all, again, like there's all these stuff where people have these groups and communities and faith, and I was always like in the middle where I had nothing, right? I was never this, I was never that, I was never anything, right? I'm basically like a Japanese, Italian, Austrian, Canadian. That's what I am. It's like, what is that? I don't know. Like, like sushi, pizza. Like that was a joke growing up, right? Do I put sushi on my pizza?
Oh man,
right? It's like, you know, that doesn't bother me, but it's like I had no identity, right? I feel like I never belonged to anything, and I think I was always envious of that, because, like, for example, I grew up with, I went to Catholic school growing up, right? Okay. And it was strange because like my mom's side of our family, they're Buddhist, right? So I was like, Mom, like what the heck? Like what are we doing? I'm so confused. But she's like, oh, you know, Catholic
beliefs don't line up.
Yeah, it's like what I was so confused, right? And it's like, oh, Catholic school, right? And you have like a uniform, and it's like generally a better education. You learn about religion and all this cool stuff. And I know that I hate this idea that people talk about where like they say you should never talk about religion and you should never talk about politics. Right. And I'm always like, why is that a standard? Right. Why not? I want to talk about those things because I don't know anything about it. Right. So whenever I hear people talk about their church, right, or their faith, like you said, like you're a person of God, you're a family man, and those weird feelings of envy kind of come back in me because I don't know what that is. Right. I don't have an appreciation for that, but I find it interesting. Right. And I sort of I kind of like that, right? That you have that, because I never had that in my life.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go on this podcast, but I can say that, you know, I grew up in what was called a Christian home, and kudos to my parents for always trying to teach me, you know, what Jesus said in the Bible. And we went to a very good church that was trying well. But it really wasn't like a crisis point in my life. It was probably about 9 years ago now, when like I hit this crisis point in my life. My wife and I had just been newly married, and I realized for the first time, like you talked about like being addicted to video games and like, you know, just like your life was run by other things. My life was run by other things. And yet I had this tension point where I said, I was a child of God. I said that I was somebody who followed Jesus, but I wasn't following like any of his teachings. I wasn't following and living in the ways that he was like saying, this is how you should live. Like, if you love me, you should live this way. And boy, like, my life crumbled to the point where I was like, I got to rebuild this. Like, and thankfully through friends and through people in my church and other, like, the community that I had, I've gotten to the point where, my life, Jesus says, love others, love me, love others. And if I'm not doing that, I'm always questioning, all right, am I actually really holding to the faith that I believe? Like, am I actually holding to the fact that I think Jesus is my savior? Like, so those kinds of things, I had that kind of like, I thought I knew what I thought I knew. And then through just various trials and difficulties and like deep, dark struggles I had in my life, boy, my eyes got opened to how little I actually lived out, like what I was claiming to believe. And that, what happened was that changed the way I thought about work, about my marriage, about parenting my kids, about the YouTube channel that I run, about, how I like, even like how I manage and think about design. Like I see the world through this. So like my first lens is, Jesus. My second lens is design, because I just can't not see design everywhere. But it's really interesting that it has become, for me, something that drives everything. And I try to be pretty upfront about that, like on my website, like, just so like, you're going to encounter things of God in what I'm doing. Don't be put off by that, because that's just what I believe, and that's how I run my life. But I'm not going to do it in a way where like I'm jabbing my finger at you or telling you you're damned and going to hell, or that, you're a horrible human being, right? You look at the way Jesus lived his life, and for the most part, he doesn't live that way. And so I've really had to question and struggle with, how do I reconcile what I believe with who I work with, and how do I love them? So boy, you're talking about love earlier, and like how having a kid changes your perspective on what love becomes a lot about sacrifice real fast when you have a kid, right? And so, yeah, it's a real interesting shift in my life for the last like 10 years, moving in this direction and just trying to reframe what I'm doing to have some meaning and purpose that's beyond just self happiness. And it's a challenge. It's a struggle. You look at that YouTube channel number, you're like, I'm only sitting at 200 today. What? Oh, now it's 201. Yeah, no, I've made it. So that's a daily struggle for me to think about, why am I doing this? Am I really in this to help people? Because if I'm not, maybe I need to rethink my involvement in this. And so it's nice to be able to take a month of May off and not be like run and ruled by that, but be thinking about, all right, what's my June video going to be? I think I got my idea for June. I think. We'll see. It changes from day to day. So
that's awesome. Do you how does your creative process work? Do you have like a bunch of video ideas you brainstorm, or do you pick a title? Like, what's your content creation process look like?
Yeah, so it's very ebb and flow. So when I first started my channel, I created like, I don't know, I think it was a year and a half ago. I created this like massive OneNote document that had a week, like it had every week of the year listed out. And I, in my mind, thought, I'm just gonna make a video a week, because that's what they say. YouTube, you're supposed to make a video a week if you want to do something. So I tried that, and I burn out really fast. I was like, I can't do this. And so I can't do YouTube. And I came across like Think Media and a couple other like content creators who were just really like,
Sean
just do it. Yeah. And Sean's awesome. Like I really appreciate just his content and that whole team. So like, just do what you can do. Like, just get started. Just start recording and start creating. And that's really where then I settled into this kind of bi-weekly, monthly cadence where I can look at what I'm thinking about and move forward. But I usually have a backlog of like OneNote files where I'll be going throughout my day and be like, I have seen this very problem over and over and over again in our industry, and have an idea about how to push our thinking a little forward. So I'll write up a quick OneNote document. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's like 3 or 4 bullet points that I might want to talk about. And then I'm actually sitting down and planning out my next week, if I'm going to do a YouTube video that week or not. That's when I'll pick one of those files that I've generated already. Usually it's recency bias. Usually it's recency bias. That's my shtick this week. I gotta hammer on that one. And so then I kind of develop that out. And I actually try to not over prepare a video. So I try to keep it pretty loose, very bullet point formatted. I'll sometimes write a paragraph just to get my like thinking going. And then the next week, after it's set in my brain, I'll actually like record a video. Generally, I don't know, for like a 10-minute video, I'll have about 30 minutes of me like sometimes just trying to express myself to the camera in a way that makes sense. And then I'll actually nail it. I'm like, okay, that one works. Or I'll clip various things together. That's the beauty of YouTube, right? You can just cut and edit it till it's clean and tidy. But yeah, that's pretty much the way I enter my videos. So it's usually very experiential for me. So like moving throughout my week, I'll be inspired by something I see or experience and think about, do I have anything of value or input to offer there? Or do I even know someone who does, and can I bring them into the conversation? I've only done that once or twice. I think you expressed on one of your podcasts, you're like, man, it's so hard to like get with other content creators. Yeah, I think I've done it twice, and one video is still not published because it's like, do I really want to go through the editing process on that one? Because it was like a 3-hour conversation, like a 30-minute topic, and it was amazing, right? It's like one of my close friends, and so we're talking about like, do we want to reshoot that because the level of effort to polish that so it's releasable? It was during COVID, so we were trying to do like, you know, the proper distancing and long mic setups, and the equipment wasn't working quite right. So there's all this like, do we even try? So we've talked about that, but yeah, just what I've run into when I see a repeated theme, that's where then I was like, all right, there might be something of value to offer here. Let's see if there is something of value. So that was really what happened with that last video. Talked about like, you know, UX design, UI design, and product design. That is a repeated theme, and I've heard other people try and tackle it, but I was like, I wonder if I could bring more clarity by showing and talking about things. So I was drawing diagrams and stuff, trying to see like, is there a way of visually expressing this to people could be like, oh, that aha moment of UI is actually a part of the overall UX and product design world. So that's where that video came from, and that's pretty much where most of my videos, there's probably a story behind every one of those videos. That's like what I've experienced. So
yeah, it's interesting because everyone has a completely different creative process. And especially with creativity, I read this book by Stephen Pressfield once. It was called The War of Art, or The Art of War, something like that. The War of Art, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Or Art of War, or some shit. And he talked about this thing called the muse. And if you respect the muse gives you with these gifts of creative ideas. And I was always like, what the heck? Like, I always wonder, like, where does creativity come from? Like, all of a sudden I'll be brushing my teeth and bam, I have a YouTube video title idea. I'm like, where did that come from, right? And I'm always like wondering what's the creative process and like, what does that look like? Because mine is unbelievably chaotic. I have more ideas and titles and videos that I want to make than I have time. Like, I have a spreadsheet, like a Google Doc spreadsheet with like 50 plus YouTube videos that I want to make. And the way I do YouTube videos now, I have so much I want to do. I just hit record, I go, and then I end it, and there's no editing. And I just upload it because I have so many more things I want to move on to, right? So
I'm envious of that right there.
Oh, really?
I'm envious of that. Oh, yeah. I can't do that. Like, the amount of times I've tried to just like the one take it is just like, it takes so much time for me to actually polish what I'm thinking and express it. That's part of who I am. Like, I have to work at expressing and re-expressing until it makes sense for other people. So that I'm envious about. But yeah, go on. Yeah, you're just talking about like all the videos and all the ideas.
Yeah, it's interesting because I came from a videography storytelling background, right? So I would go out with all my camera gear. I get these very specific shots. I would use like wide angle lenses. You know, it's like a common practice in videography where you start a scene with a super wide angle lens, right? Because you're setting up the environment. Like, this is the area, this is where we're going to tell the story, and then you use these different focal lengths, you know, to use different types of moods, right? And this is how I started. YouTube with this very analytical, very specific style with heavy editing. I posted a video maybe once a month or 2 videos every month. And again, there was like this idea that I heard where, oh, you got to post every week and you got to be consistent. But it's interesting because YouTube has actually come out and said this, that is not the case, where you can be a creator who posts daily. You can post weekly, you can post bi-weekly, monthly, or even like once every 2 months. But their thing is all about consistency. If you post once a month, make sure you post once per month, like at the same day, the same time, and have like a certain level of quality in that video. And they said that the algorithm isn't prejudiced, or it doesn't have any like parameters where it only promotes people who post every week, right? And I've seen this from a person in my niche. He barely posts once a month, like barely. Sometimes 2 months go by, he posts one video. And I was always wondering, why is his channel so successful? And it's because YouTube, it promotes all different styles, right? And I always try to tell this to creators that, maybe in 2012, it was once a week. Maybe that was the case then, but now it's not. And YouTube has also publicly said they won't kill your channel if you take a break. And they actually encourage creators to take a month or 2 off for their mental health. Like they've said this publicly from their main channel. And my best friend, who is a full-time YouTuber, he's like a full-time content creator. This is where I get all my information from, because I actually have a lot of friends who are like fully immersed in the YouTube game that like study this stuff.
Yeah.
They actually have like YouTube managers. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. Like it got one of my friends has a YouTube Shorts manager. I'm like, how'd you get that? He's like, oh, invite only. I'm like, okay, all right, so
Come on,
that's interesting. I'm like, how do I apply? I guess I can't, right? But I get these little tidbits of information, right, from people who are extremely successful, and I'm always like, oh, okay. I always thought it was like I'll post 52 videos a year type of thing, but no, it's not, right? And so it's you can go down the path of really polished, really quality videos like what you make and be successful. And you can also do the super chaotic, rambly nonsense that I make, where I'm just going off on tangents, I'm ranting, my thought process doesn't really make any sense, there's no continuity in my story, but I can post more often, and that works too. And you can kind of figure out what works best for you. But at the end of the day, YouTube is sort of like, what is consistent. If it's once a month, then just keep showing up once a month. And if you want to take a break, like you want to take May off, for example, YouTube, it doesn't punish you for that. And they actually promote that. They probably want you to take a vacation, and they want to promote this idea of mental health. And it's something that like I want to promote more, because I love YouTube, the platform, right? And I always feel like people are scared that if they don't post once a week, then their channel is going to die or something.
Yeah. And part of that, like, so there's 2 things you said in there I want to unpack. One thing you said, like, you can make really polished videos. I'm glad you think mine are really polished. In my mind, they're not. Like, they've got a long way to go. Maybe it's just I have a high degree of excellence, so I always try to do my best. But the other thing you said is like there's a variety of content quality, and it's not about the polishing of the video. It's about the content you're providing. If the content you're providing is useful for the means people want it to be useful for, success. I follow a handful of people just in variety of things. So Ali Abdaal is another content creator I follow. And I just love watching his videos because they're so well thought out and so put together. I took his course on how to use like Final Cut Pro, because that's what I use for like my editing.
Oh, really? Wow.
And just watching how Ali lays out his process, I was like, oh, I could totally do that. And I was using Premiere Pro before, and it took me about 3 weeks to edit a video. It was awful. I took that course, and because of the content, because of what he showed, I was down to being able to edit a video in about 3 days, 4 days, maybe if I got really fancy with like animations and drawings and stuff like that. And getting back to this, like, it was really about the quality of the content, not the quality of the package of the content. And I've seen this over and over and over again of people who they can tell a good story or they can help you understand something, and it's just them sitting in front of their blinds behind them. And that's it. Like, it's just their iPhone, which is really, that's all I use, my iPhone and my Yeti mic. And we move on, right? And that's why I've tried not to get too wrapped up in the polishing of the content, but to really just make sure, is the content itself, and have I expressed it in a way that it's understandable and people find value from? And I want to have a high degree of excellence, but I'm not a videographer, right? I can't tell you what kind of lens is good and what the best, DSLR like body is that I should buy. It's just, I grab my iPhone and I go to work. And that's it. So yeah, I totally agree. That's like, consistency is key to do it well. But I've also seen in the times that I have taken a break and then I come back, there's sort of this double-edged sword of people who were following me kind of forget that they were, and then I post and they're like, oh, I forgot about John. I don't need him in my stream. So I'll go and then it'll go boop, 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 boop. So it's kind of like a net neutral or a net gain in the end, because YouTube does value that. So yeah, it's interesting to be able to see how people create different levels of polish, I'll call it, but the people who are successful is because what they are actually expressing is inherently valuable to the people who want to consume it. And that's where it is. The other thing you said was about creativity. I have been studying this for probably about 2 years now. I took a really deep, dark dive into the whole concept of what creativity is. So there's a book on my shelf right here. You can see it says Creativity by Csikszentmihalyi.
Oh,
is his name.
yeah, I know it. I know that.
That's like...
You pronounce his name good. Wow.
Thank you. It took a lot of practice. A lot of practice. I looked at several YouTube videos on how do you pronounce his name to get it right. But that's like a super deep dive into like case studies of creativity. And last like year and a half, I've realized that in the UX industry, we've thought a lot about a scientific and psychological approach to design. And you talked about your process being very chaotic. A good design process is going to, at some point, have a ton of chaos. Because without the ability to like break out of what the expected is, you just create expected results every time. You're just mimicking someone else. You're grabbing someone else's pattern and putting it into place here. And there's good reasons why you do that. All these like Nielsen heuristics and Norman, all the laws that Nielsen Norman kind of created. And there's a whole book on the laws of UX and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, creativity in my world, I've been trying to amplify for designers in product design because it's kind of a feared thing. I might fail, I might get it wrong. And one of my mentors told me, like, if you haven't tried and failed, you're not doing design. It's like, ooh, I gotta think about that. So I've been sort of on a mission lately. I just gave a presentation last week to my team on taking creativity and infusing it into your design process, because without creativity, you're actually not doing design. You're actually just trying to scientifically, linear logic generate something, and that's not how design works. You don't see a problem and infer a solution. You see a problem and try a bunch of stuff, which helps you better understand the problem, and then you might pick one of those, or you might create another solution, and hopefully that fits better. So it's a very back and forth exploratory process. And creativity is really helpful in trying to like just understand that world. So
I love it. What other I'm super interested in books, but what other like maybe not life changing, what other books have you read recently that maybe not helped with creativity but were really beneficial to your work? Do you have any recommendations?
Let me look at my shelf. This is not a vanity shelf. Like, every one of these books has a purpose. I'm famous for in meetings grabbing a book off my shelf and being like, this one
really?
right here, you got to read it because of this concept. I think one of the ones, I'm looking through my camera lens to my thing behind me, my bookshelf behind me. I think one of the things that's really stuck with me recently it's a tough one. It's between two right now. So Adam Stelzner wrote a book on the idea of like engineering and a little bit about the creative process. I made a video on this one too because it was so impactful to me. And he was head over the Mars lander, the Mars rover that landed, and the process that they followed to create that. There are so many really good like stories of, we are stuck here in this design problem and we don't know how to move forward, and we can adopt last year's model because they had sent a different probe to Mars, but it doesn't fit with the problem because the weight and the criteria of what they're trying to accomplish doesn't fit anymore. And so that book was really, really life-changing, not life-changing. It was design view changing for me because he was able to express a lot of things that I felt before and had like this angst over, but didn't know how to express. And so he expressed this idea of called like the dark room. And when you're dealing with a problem and you don't fully understand it, it's kind of like you're locked in this room and everything's dark and you're just feeling along the walls looking for a knob or like hinges for a door or something. Like, how do you get out of this room? And that's inherent to problem solving, is you have to live and be okay with this. I don't know where I'm at and I don't know where I'm going yet, but I'm still feeling my way through this room to understand what is the actual bounding of the problem. And then you inevitably stumble onto something that's going to let you out of that room and solve the problem. So that was like my favorite analogy. And he tells it far better than I do. So I loved that book. The other one was Creative Selection by Ken Casendo, I think his name is. And he was an engineer at Apple. And one of the big case studies he uses is how they created a digital keyboard that worked for people, and how long they worked on it, and how many prototypes they created, and how they tested it and everything else. I'm like, this is just doubles down on my understanding that design actually brings form to a solution so you can experience it and try it out, and other people can try it out, and you can figure out, well, this is kind of working, but it doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite do what we need it to do. So let's keep trying. We'll keep going. And they were just saying that there's no way we would have the iPhone keyboard we have today if they hadn't kept building prototypes, like functional, coded, real life, on the iPhone prototypes before they ever released the iPhone, because that was like the thing. Like, if they couldn't nail the keyboard, they weren't going to do the iPhone. They just couldn't, because they needed that really smooth keyboard to work on an all-glass surface. So
like the keyboard.
Those are the two books
in the smartphone.
Yeah.
Oh,
yep, yeah.
Okay,
so, yeah. So, here's my text messages. This keyboard right here, like, if that didn't work well, the whole idea of the iPhone was dead, because they didn't want to create like a hard keyboard on something. Like, they were trying to push the digital keyboard technology.
BlackBerry.
Yep.
I forgot about those. Like the keys, they physically came out of the bottom of the mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that BlackBerry.
You remember
that.
Do you remember the years when we actually had phones that had physical keys that you could click on? Yes. They were trying to break away from that. And it's really interesting because now we've got the iPad, and typing on an iPad is a normal thing now. And you even see it mimicked in the kind of like keyboard surfaces they produce. Like, I'm staring at my MacBook Pro and it's got the butterfly keys, and those are like trying almost to reproduce that touchscreen feel because there's such little relief in those keys. You're getting more and more towards this like blending of the physical world and the digital world. So it's really interesting to see where Apple's going with that.
That's hilarious. It's funny because I'm old enough to remember that I had a rotary phone when I was a kid. You know those where you stick your finger in the hole and then you spin it and then it winds back?
Oh, yes.
And then some.
I had one of those.
Oh, did you too? Wait,
yeah.
How old are you?
So I'm 37.
Wow, I'm 37 too. We're the same age.
Congratulations.
84?
And so it's 85 for me, so I just turned 37.
Oh, okay. So I'm turning 38, so I'm 1 year older than you. Okay. So we basically grew up. See, this is what I love about our generation is we grew up without the internet, but we are still young enough to go through the whole technological age where we're not like our parents who have this rejection for kind of technology, right? And I remember the days where when I had my first 56K modem, and then like you use the internet and it blocks your phone, and then your friend phones you and then it disconnects. Like it's like such a crazy world. But at the time, it was like amazing. Like I could go to NBA.com and I can look at the box score from last night's basketball game. I didn't have to wait for the newspaper. Like I used to read the newspaper every day to get all my sports box scores, right? And I was like, wow, I can like log on to this virtual world through my phone line and look all it. Like it's so cool. But then now you look at where we are at. Like in my 2-year-old, she uses like her iPad flawlessly. Like I'm like, knows how to swipe, knows how to skip ads.
Yep.
I'm like, what? Like this is so crazy. Like everything, this like you said, this touch interface of buttons that aren't physically sticking out of the unit, right? But it's kind of cool because I can appreciate the progression, right, of the technology. And I know this is probably like showing our age, but it's just kind of cool because when we're older, like when we're like grandparents or like on our deathbed, we're gonna be those guys like, oh, in my day, right, we had 3 kilobytes per second. And it took like all night to download one song, one MP3, right? We're gonna be those old like super grumpy men. We're like the new generation, and be like, what the heck are you guys talking about?
What's 56K? I don't even know what that is.
Oh my god.
Oh man. That's the sound that every once in a while I'll hear, like mixed into like a remix or something like that. I'm like, I know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else knows what that is, but I remember that sound.
Oh my gosh, that's so
awesome.
funny. Do you remember when like high speed internet came out?
Yeah. I remember like DSL. That was
DSL.
That was the new jam.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny.
Oh, how far we've come. Yeah,
it's crazy because we went from like, I guess you would call it kilobytes, or I'm not entirely sure of the proper pronunciation I think that's what it was called, but then went into like megabytes, and then now it's like gigabytes, terabytes, and like the speed at which information transfers is like wild. It's so crazy. And I really appreciate it with like back in the day, I wanted to download like a song, it would take, I don't know, like hours. But now you can stream like a 4K movie instantaneously, right? I'm just like, holy, that's like, it's so wild. And I know that like we take it for granted on a day-to-day basis. But even this podcast, right? Like we're in 2 completely different countries, even though we're both on the East Coast. Just like the ability to connect with people and share information and learn and have like this discussion, right? And to have this podcast and talk about ideas. Like imagine trying to do that when we were kids. Like I'd have to write you a letter, like a pen pal, and mail it to you. And then I'd have to wait like a month to get a response. Like the way in which we transfer information, I love this time that we're in so much. Like I love this age of information in the digital world. It's just it's I take it for granted every day, but I just absolutely love where we're at right now.
Yeah, I both love it and hate it because I'm a tech, like I love technology and I love toys and I love things like as they're coming out. I'm a self-proclaimed Apple fanboy. I love to watch like as they release, just their storytelling and everything. Really interesting. Yeah, but I also hate it at the same time. Like this whole weekend. So we just had Memorial Day weekend here in Ohio in the U.S. And I actually I usually wear my Apple Watch all the time, but I was to the point where I was like, I just need a break. So I didn't have my watch on at all, so no notifications. I had my phone with me, but I had it silenced and kind of like left it in places intentionally so like it wouldn't be in front of me all the time, because I just wanted a break from all the emails and text messages and everything else. Like I love the people who are communicating with me, but it can become really, really overwhelming. So this was sort of like a detox weekend for me. But yeah, I love the technology. I love the ability to connect with people. I got friends that have moved across the U.S., but I can send them a text message and we can have a phone conversation and still stay in touch. So it's a really great time to be able to still connect with people and then meet new friends that you've never met before and not have to travel halfway around the world. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess this is like one point where we diverge. I'm like an Apple hater. I don't own anything.
It's okay.
Anything Apple. It's strange because I've had an iPhone before. I've used Apple products, but for whatever reason, they never really vibed with me. I've always been a PC guy because I was into like computer engineering when I was in university and high school. So I was into like building computers and installing Windows myself and building these gaming PCs. So I've always been like a PC person, and then I naturally transitioned into Android, which, to be perfectly honest, is a shittier phone. Like, to be perfectly honest, like
It depends.
like my wife is like full team Apple, right? And like their products, they're so well made and they don't crash and they don't have bugs, they don't have problems. Where my phone, it's just like my computer. I have to maintain it, I have to clean it, I have to like do all these things. I got to reboot it sometimes. Like there's all this maintenance that comes with it. But my wife's phone, it works. It just works every single time. It just works flawlessly. And to be perfectly honest, I'm like, man, the design of the Apple products, I'm sure this is why you appreciate it so much. It's like, it's so well done. But it's funny because for whatever reason, I just never jumped or got on that bandwagon, or whatever reason. I never really enjoyed it. And it's funny because I know you were talking earlier about Ali Abdal and Final Cut Pro. And my friend, who's like a full-time YouTuber, his whole YouTube channel, he makes tutorials about Final Cut Pro, right? And he was like me, he, like an Android guy. Like we had Samsung phones and all this stuff, but then he has a MacBook because Final Cut Pro is like for Mac, right? And then he got like an iPad, and then he got like it slowly kind of like took over. Where he's like, man, the Apple stuff, it's so good and it's like so well made, but for whatever reason, I've remained stubborn. Right? I don't know if
and that's no shade to you. To each his own. I have a lot of designers love Apple, some designers hate it, and I think everybody just fits with a different brand, and that's okay. Like that's why these brands exist, is because not everybody's an Apple guru. Not everybody likes that experience. Not everyone wants that locked down sort of experience. And other people really like Android because it's much more flexible. So,
but like in your line of work, I think this is prevalent in like big tech. Does everyone use generally Apple products?
Soft yes.
Soft yes.
It kind of depends. Yeah. What's interesting is a lot of the software used to have to run on Macs. And then Adobe did a good job of branching out to Windows, so you could have this hybrid thing. And then for a short time now, last 6 years, there's a prevalent app called Sketch that only ran on Macs. So it was just de facto, you had to have a Mac. Now Figma's come out. Figma is a web browser app, so you can have whatever device you want and still work on it. So now it's like, I think you're going to see sort of more Windows coming back in because you're not beholden to a kind of coding that would force you into a specific thing. So yeah, I think a lot of people appreciate Apple, but there's a ton of people I know who are designers, and they love their Android or they love their Mac. So
yeah, it's funny because I have this like personal belief where I don't believe in teams. It's kind of reminds me of like Nike versus Adidas, like politics left and right, Apple or Mac, Xbox or PlayStation, right? There's always like this team that we want to like join in and be part of. And I don't have this feeling like I'm team Android. Like I just kind of use what fits best to me. But at work, and like I have a day job too, and I work for like, I guess you would call it like a Fortune 500 company or whatever. And over here in Toronto, a lot of businesses and stores, they have integrated Apple products into their whole business line, where it's not like a cash register with like a computer. It's just an iPad, and everything is being streamlined towards Mac. And I feel like it's just because like the functionality of the Apple products is just so good that it just makes so much sense, right? I guess maybe you could appreciate this like from a design standpoint, to have everything Apple, have all like MacBooks, or not MacBooks, iPads, run your business that way. And it seems to be working like flawlessly, because I don't see any companies with like Android tablets running their business, right?
Or they do it very, very well, so you don't know it's that. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Oh man. Hey, it's
Great,
9 o'clock, bro. We did an hour.
It is. Woo! Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I love the questions. I love the conversation. I appreciate you reaching out. And sorry it took so long to sync up. I'm glad we could do
Yeah,
it.
no worries. Let's promote some of your work. Where can the viewers check out YouTube channel? I guess website, business, or any of that type of stuff.
Yeah, so JonDaiello.com. You can find me there. I'm also John Daiello on Medium. I try to write a lot of articles. And then LinkedIn is really where I publish a lot of sort of regular stuff. You can follow me on Twitter, but that's kind of that's like the hybrid mix of between my normal life and my UX and product design stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the main outlets.
Oh, awesome. All right, dude. Have a good day. It was great talking to you. And hopefully all
Thanks.
the best to the YouTube channel and the dream. And hopefully we can get some
Thanks.
cross-pollination of our viewers. And
Love
I
it.
can drive some traffic your way when I can.
If it does, yeah, great. If not, just happy to chat. Love it.
All right, perfect. Have a good day. Thanks, guys. Peace.
You
Peace.
too. Talk to you soon.